if he was at all worried about the relationship between Israel and the United States of America.
Well, Aaron, I think it's okay for friends to disagree on some things. I'll tell you that what I saw was a great relationship between our two countries. The bonds between America and Israel go way beyond President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Started long before and will continue long after. But the president has been very warm towards the Israeli people, and we certainly appreciate it.
Now, the President of the United States and the Prime Minister did not really come off fully on the same page on Iran. Just one way of putting this. When the Prime Minister approached the podium, he talked about Iran first. President Obama mentioned it last, in fact, prefacing it with the word finally. And here's what they said.
We prefer to resolve this diplomatically, and there's still time to do so.
Diplomacy and sanctions so far have not stopped Iran's nuclear program.
Do you think the U.S. really has, and I'll quote President Obama, all options on the table when it comes to Iran when you hear words like you heard today?
Well, Aaron, I think we have to look at the facts. And the facts are that words in Washington or in Jerusalem don't stop centrifuges in Natanz. As all this has gone on, the Iranians have actually tripled the pace that they're accelerated the pace of uranium enrichment. And so it's not actually stopping Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. So I agree with Prime Minister Netanyahu that we have to have a credible threat on the table beyond the diplomatic threat.
Do you trust the United States would truly act in a military, all-in sort of way if forced with that decision?
I would hope that America will stand behind us. You know, we've never asked America to defend us. America has never sent troops to defend Israel. We can defend ourselves. But I think that time is very short, and we're talking about a threat to the entire world. Iran with a nuclear weapon is no different from Al-Qaeda with an atom bomb. That is something that the world cannot accept. It would change the whole Middle East and, in fact, the entire world scene.
Now, you mentioned timing, and I want to ask you something about that because Prime Minister Netanyahu today did seem, Naftali, to backtrack on what he said before. At the UN last fall, he had said about 6 months, i.e. now is going to be where that literal red line he drew would come into effect. Today, though, he responded to a question about whether he agreed with President Obama's most recent comment, which is that Iran has about a year, and here is what Prime Minister said.
It hasn't yet reached the red line that I had described in my speech at the UN. They're getting closer. We do have a common assessment on these schedules, on intelligence. We share that intelligence, and we don't have any argument about it.
When you hear that, Naftali, do you worry that the world may say Prime Minister Netanyahu has cried wolf? He said this was urgent. We had a time. Now he's saying we have another year.
I'm confident that Prime Minister Netanyahu will do everything to defend Israel and will not allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon. And I'm also hopeful that President Obama will indeed, keep our backs or have our backs, as he called it. I think America respects the notion that we can't outsource our security to anyone else. And if push comes to shove, Israel will defend itself at any price. We hope that we won't need to get to that, and the way to prevent it is to create a viable, a credible threat, a paralyzing threat to Iran, which we're not there quite yet.
Naftali, on the peace process, a very crucial topic here, and President Obama said, look, I'm going to listen on that, I'm going to go home, and then I'll be ready to talk about it. But here's what you said on this program back in November.
Every time we vacated a piece of land, handed it over to the Palestinians, what we got in return was a mass wave of terror. We have to learn the lesson. Just as the United States or President Obama would not imagine to negotiate with Al-Qaeda.
And here's what President Obama said in June 2009 on that obviously famous trip to Cairo.
Let there be no doubt, the situation for the Palestinian people is intolerable. And America will not turn our backs on the legitimate Palestinian aspiration for dignity, opportunity, and a state of their own.
And then, that was a few years ago. Does he still believe it? Well, here's what he said today.
Let me just reiterate that a central element of a lasting peace must be a strong and secure Jewish state where Israel's security concerns are met, alongside a sovereign and independent Palestinian state.
Would you ever accept that? A sovereign and independent Palestinian state?
Well, it's no secret that my opinion is that forming a Palestinian state just a 5-minute ride from where I'm sitting right now would, in fact, create a terrible situation in Israel and a 100-year-long conflict between us and the Arabs. As a citizen of Israel who lives, 3 or 4 miles from the potential Palestinian state, I don't want my own children to be under direct fire from Arab terrorists. And what's happened down in the Gaza Strip, up in Lebanon, any area that we've vacated over the past 20 years turned into a launch pad for missiles and terror attacks on us. Certainly, I can tell you that I do not want war. I've served in wars. I've lost friends in wars, more than many others. So there's nothing Israel and myself seek more than having peace with the Arabs, but not at the risk, or in fact of the almost certainty of risking my children's lives.
Naftali, the Justice Minister today, Tzipi Livni, told our Jessica Yellen that it is clear in Israel that Syria has used chemical weapons. Obviously, the United States, the President and the State Department have said they've seen those reports. They have not yet confirmed whether they think Syria has used chemical weapons, whether it be the government or the opposition. Have you seen proof that Bashar al-Assad or the opposition have used them?
Well, I don't know about proof, but we're very concerned about these chemical weapons being taken or handed over to Hezbollah in Lebanon. I'll remind you there's roughly 60,000 missiles in Lebanon targeted at the north and center of Israel. The chemical weapons exist in Syria, the missiles exist in Lebanon, and when you connect the two, it's a mortal risk for Israel, and we'll protect ourselves against this sort of action.